Well, welcome back to We Don't Color on the Dog. It is budget day. We've got State Representative Alex Andrade. Alex, thank you for coming on.
Hey, good morning, Rick. And it's more like budget evening.
Yeah, really, really. Tonight will be the final vote, hopefully. No catch today. Give us the macro view of the budget.
So the reason why we're going to gavel in at 7 p.m. tonight is that we laid the budget on the table at around 10 p.m. on Friday, and we need to give at least 72 hours to let the budget sit and be on the table to be reviewed before we can vote on it. So the earliest we can vote on it to finalize it is tonight at 10 p.m. The overall budget's about $115 billion. It's about $500 million lower than what the governor requested in his governor's proposed budget. And I think the big things are the shifts in our taxes this year. We're completely cutting for the first time in Florida, the business rent tax. We were the only state in the country that charged sales tax on people's commercial leases. So we collected about $1 billion, nearly $1 billion a year in these commercial lease tax payments, and we're permanently cutting that, eliminating that. We're also permanently introducing a sales tax holiday for back to school, and we're permanently cutting taxes on things like the blue tarps that you're aware of that people put on their roofs after hurricane. We're permanently cutting taxes on a lot of those kind of hurricane preparedness items that people need. I think it's a good fiscally conservative budget. We're setting up a budget stabilization fund that'll sock away nearly 25% of our annual budget into savings. So no matter what we might face in the future, we'll never have to raise taxes to cover our budget for any given year ever again.
So, concerns about tourist development tax and property tax, there's no cuts in those areas or shifting with those taxes.
No, I don't believe so, Rick. I have to double check. I haven't been as aggressively on the tax package, but no, I don't see anything on tourist development taxes. And on property taxes, we can't do anything anyway. We have to put it on a referendum next year on the ballot. So I think that's gonna happen. But I mean, Governor DeSantis is pretty much all but admitted that his plan that he wanted to do for property tax cuts was for us to cut property taxes and then for us to on the ballot next year and then for the state to come in and subsidize counties to make ends meet for these counties. I don't think that's a very intelligent plan. I don't think we should be in a situation where the state has to subsidize local governments in their budgets. We can come up with a more holistic plan to make sure that counties have the revenue they need and at the same time are cutting their spending where they can to actually accommodate it. So, if you look at taxes like I do, the real tax is how much we spend every year. So the fact that we're spending less than last year, I think is a big deal. You can't measure taxes by pretty much anything else other than how much we spend. So no, I'm proud of the overall budget.
Now, healthcare, your silo, how did all that shake out?
Depends on what you're talking about. It's a big budget. It's about $45 billion in our overall budget. Inching closer to like half of the overall state budget, and a lot of the budget in healthcare is set up in the language that we put in place on telling agencies how they're supposed to be operating. There's a ton of language in there. We, for the first time in a decade, are removing the emergency authority from the Department of Health to actually craft rules for a medical marijuana program. I was shocked when I discovered this year, because I haven't followed medical marijuana that closely. I was shocked to find out this year the Department of Health, all the rules they've ever implemented for a medical marijuana program have been done under emergency authority, meaning they don't have to go through the same scrutiny. They don't have to engage in public comment. There's no transparency or public oversight that's applied to these rules. So I don't see the emergency when I can go to a gas station and buy 10 milligram THC cans out of the same fridge I buy my Red Bull out of. And I think that they should be subjected to the same transparency, the same sunshine that every other rulemaking authority engages in. So I think that's a pretty big deal for the overall medical marijuana industry. It's a shift to try and treat it more seriously, like an actual medical program. On top of that, engaging in we've directed ACA to sign an agreement with the state legislature, essentially, to share all data about our managed care program, our Medicaid program. So by sharing all that data, what it allows us to do is hire our own actuary and have our own actuary review our managed care program for the first time, so that we're never put in a circumstance again where in the middle of the year, ACA's actuary tells us we have to cough up 800 million more dollars in the middle of the year to make our Medicaid program actuarially sound. I don't think that's a good way to run government. I don't think that's a good way to run this program specifically. And so by engaging in these kind of data sharing agreements, we'll be able to make smarter decisions in the future for that program.
Alex, I know you were aggressive at looking at getting rid of some of these vacant jobs in the healthcare area. You look at, I think I saw Florida Politics reported that 1,700 vacant positions are being cut in this budget. It's amazing to me that that's kind of like a hidden pocket of money that the administration can use however they want within a department to cover up other inefficiencies. It's 1,700 jobs is a lot.
Yeah, I think in healthcare, if I remember correctly, in healthcare we have about 1,200 that we're cutting just in our healthcare silo. I would have liked it to be more. I would have liked it to be closer to 3,000. But yeah, I mean, it's not in my silo. But for the past 2 years, when I ran the transportation budget, I had the Florida Highway Patrol tell us both years, hey, we desperately need more troopers. We need more FTEs, full-time equivalent employee positions, to hire more troopers because we're just so understaffed. But they had something like 200 vacant trooper positions. And I kept asking them, like, you need to fill the trooper positions you have before you ask for more. There's no way you're hiring 200 troopers this year. And finally, after that first year, we discovered that what they really did was they incorporated a whole new pay scale for their troopers without legislative authority. And then to kind of blend it out and pay for it, they needed more vacant positions that they were never going to fill to pay their existing troopers. That's not a good way to run government. That's not a good way to set your budget. We need to have an accurate understanding of how many actual people, human beings, warm bodies, each agency needs to be working to better understand what else they need general revenue for. It's not criminal, right? But the best term is like fraud. I mean, it's we're saying we need more employees, even though we have a bunch of empty positions, when in reality, what they need is general revenue that's unrestricted for maybe like things that they didn't anticipate or haven't gone through the thought process of knowing how much they might have to spend in a given year. It's part of like any government budget, right? Like I'm sure everyone who might watch this knows like a lot of government agencies at the end of a budget year spend a ton of money last minute so their budget doesn't get cut the next year. Very similar process, but again, that's not necessarily the best use of taxpayer funds. We're certainly not being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar if we allow agencies to kind of get away with some of that lazy budgeting. So reducing positions, even vacant positions, right? We're not firing anybody, but reducing these positions is a good way to try and reduce the size and scope of government, which I think every conservative campaigns on.
Well, it's a way of gaming the system, isn't it? I mean, in the end, it's like you said, it's not illegal, but it is a way to game the system to give you some, extra cash to use for however you may already have a plan that you don't want to tell anybody about, or an agency or an initiative you want to do. So I think that's healthy. Talking about initiatives, how did Hope Florida come out in the budget?
Well, Hope Florida still exists where there's actual human beings that are employed as Hope navigators at state agencies. We're not proposing to fire them, but it was kind of a non-starter for me personally to say we're going to give this Hope Florida Initiative Amalgus program more money, new money. So we didn't give them any more or new money, but the folks that are already employed as Hope Navigators will continue to be employed as Hope Navigators. Rick, I think the best way to understand Hope Florida, like reading through the lines, depending on the day at a press conference, DeSantis might call it a movement, or he might call it a philosophy, or he might call it a way of life. It's like Goop. It's like a lifestyle brand for him or something. But it's essentially someone in the governor's office, maybe Casey DeSantis herself, had this bright idea like, let's hire unlicensed social workers to do social work with the whole goal of getting people off of welfare. But at the end of the day, you're just hiring unlicensed social workers to do social work. So if we can be more honest about what this program is, cut out the fluff, cut out the BS, and talk about, all right, we need more social workers. Well, we can have an honest conversation. And if there's a need for more social workers, great. Let's talk about the need. Let's hire social workers. But I mean, we're not really doing vetting. There's no understanding of the qualifications that these people are having before they're taking these positions where vulnerable people are reaching out for them and they're telling them they're going to connect them with the assistance they qualify for. How do I know that a Hope Navigator knows what this person qualifies for? I don't. How do I know that this Hope Navigator is trained or qualified or can be trusted with this member of the public's private personal information? I can't. I mean, they are state employees, but I mean, we have a lot of times, my understanding is we have some rigorous standards for social workers, and we expect social workers to follow a certain process, but we can't just change the name of social work and act like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or act like somehow it's a core conservative principle. Like, social work is vital. No, I'm not opposed to people engaging as social workers and providing those services to the public, but I mean, we can't just change the title of it, change the intent of it, and act like nothing's wrong.
Well, and have no metrics to know what they're
Zero.
doing. And that's the other piece, is an expansion of a program without any solid metrics to grasp what they've really accomplished.
Oh, Rick, they've been saying they've helped 30,000 people for over a year. Have they not helped any new people in the past year? I mean, they keep like they have no metrics, no real metrics for this program. Best I can tell is like a lot of Hope Navigators refer people to career source programs like Career Source Escarosa. Those people at Career Source who are qualified to actually get people their federal benefits, get them educational grants, get them into housing and find them jobs. Those people are doing the same thing they've always done, and yet somehow we're trying to give that credit to the Hope Florida as if it was some like new or novel idea. Career Source Escarosa does great work. These career source groups around the state, we restructured them a few years ago, but they still serve a vital role in state government. And to act as if somehow Hope Florida is the vital change to all of that is just patently ridiculous to me.
Now, so everything should be fairly procedural today, you believe, with the budget?
Yeah. So the experience I had last week during our last couple of days of budget negotiations was this kind of war of attrition. Depending on like the Senate or the House, depending on which one just wanted to get out of there sooner during an offer, they'd either cave or pay. And so there was a lot of attrition. It just felt like a lot of people were ready to get out of here. So the last minute things that we got done in each budget, like I think everybody is ready to get out of here and be done and send this budget to the governor. So well, we have 3 hours to talk about it, and I'm sure we'll take the full 3 hours. I don't see any major snafus this evening.
Okay. What's different about this process? You've been involved before, you were dealing with transportation and tourism last year. How's this process different for you?
You mean as far as the
Budget, the
healthcare
budget
budget?
negotiation and all this.
Well, because of my relationship with Lawrence and Danny, the speaker and the appropriations chair, they've given me a lot of leeway to run this budget. A big difference between the budget I ran the past 2 years and the budget I ran this year is the amount of language, the amount of proviso, back of the bill, conforming bill, and implementing bill language healthcare requires. Like, we provide so much written direction as part of our budget, and budget essentially sets a lot of the policy, especially on the social program side, right? So like, I was dealing more with words than with numbers in this budget this past year. And that was different. I mean, with the transportation budget, a lot of it is numbers. It's, how much are we going to put in the transportation trust fund? How much are we going to give the National Guard to go fund camp landing improvements, et cetera? With this budget, it is a ton of, ACA is going to create a new provider code for a different service to implement a new service that we put money in to pay for. Is going to provide certain reports. Nursing homes are going to, provide audited, statements about their performance to make sure that nursing homes are performing appropriately. We're going to comply with CMS standards, et cetera. We're going to meet certain percentages of national standards under CMS. You have a ton of language in the healthcare budget, and it's stuff that, I mean, you have to live it for a while to fully understand it and appreciate it, but it is massive and complicated. And it's been fun trying to become one of those handful of people who actually understand how the healthcare budget works. Because I can tell you for a fact, before this year, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
I'd put it that way. And so I'm still learning. At least now I know what I don't know, and I know kind of the experts and where to find them. But it's been a really fun process. And working with Jay Trumbull on the Senate side. Jay's a brilliant guy. It's crazy to think we're the same age, because he's like way cooler and smarter and more experienced and way more mature. But he's a great guy, down to earth. I can see why people in the Senate put their trust in him to hopefully become a Senate president in a few years. But he's been a great counterpart on the Senate side, and it's been fun to work with him.
Alex, thank you for coming on today. We'll catch up a little bit later in the week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rick.
All right, take care.